You barren, shameless thing! I will deal with you! I will deal with you!
The night Claire signed away her marriage, her husband's mistress was already 6 months pregnant with a child Claire could never have. Claire found out the way most women find out. Not from him, not from a confession whispered in the dark. She found out from a photograph. A stranger sent it to her phone at 11 at night. No message, just a picture of her husband, Dean, with his hand resting on another woman's swollen belly outside a restaurant in Los Angeles. Claire stared at that photo for 11 minutes straight. She counted the minutes because she needed something to hold on to. Her hands were shaking so hard the phone nearly slipped onto the kitchen floor. If you are watching this right now, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. This story is going to take you somewhere you don't expect. So stay with me till the end. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now because you do not want to miss what happens next. Claire had been married to Dean for 7 years. 7 years of trying for a baby. 7 years of hospital visits, of injections, of crying quietly in bathroom stalls after another negative test. Dean never yelled at her for it. He was patient, or so she thought. He held her hand during the miscarriages. 3 of them. He told her it wasn't her fault. He told her he loved her no matter what. He was lying the whole time. The woman in the photo was named Wren. 26 years old, sharp-eyed, ambitious. The kind of woman who wore confidence like perfume. Wren worked as a marketing consultant for a company Dean always talked about at dinner parties. A company called the biggest client in my portfolio. A company he said made him look like a genius in front of his bosses. He never told anyone the name of the company's true owner. He didn't know it himself. Nobody did. The owner stayed hidden behind lawyers and holding companies, a name on paper that nobody could trace back to a face. Claire drove to that restaurant in Los Angeles that same night. She didn't call ahead. She didn't plan what she would say. She just drove, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it over the radio she forgot to turn off. She found him at a corner table, laughing, Dean's hand still resting on Wren's belly like he had done it 100 times before. Claire didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there until Dean noticed her, until his face turned the color of ash. Wren looked up at Claire with a smirk that could cut glass. "Oh," she said, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "So you're the Barren pig he used to be married to." The restaurant went silent. Forks stopped midair. Somebody's glass clinked against a plate. Claire felt every eye in that room land on her like a slap. Dean didn't defend her. He didn't say a word. He just looked down at the table like a coward who had run out of places to hide. Claire walked out without saying anything. She got in her car, drove 3 blocks, pulled over, and finally let herself cry. Not soft tears. Ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. 7 years of loyalty, of hoping, of blaming her own body for failing him. And this was what she got. A stranger's laughter and a cruel name thrown at her in public. But here's what nobody in that restaurant knew. Not Dean, not Wren. Not a single person eating their overpriced steak that night. Claire wasn't just some woman who couldn't have children. Claire was the quiet, hidden owner of Halden Group, the very company Dean bragged about to his co-workers, the company that signed Wren's paycheck every single month. Claire had built that company from nothing 12 years ago, long before she met Dean. She kept it separate from her marriage on purpose. She used a maiden name on the paperwork, hired a team of executives to be the public face, and stayed in the shadows because she never wanted people to love her for her money. She wanted to be loved for herself. She thought Dean loved her for herself. She was wrong about that too. If you're still with me, drop a comment right now telling me if you saw this coming. Because trust me, this story is about to flip upside down, and you don't want to miss it. Smash that like button. It truly helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. Claire didn't go home that night. She checked into a hotel in Connecticut, the state where she grew up, the place that always felt like safety when nothing else did. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed until the sun came up. Replaying 7 years of her life like a movie, she suddenly realized was fake from the very first scene. She thought about the time Dean worked late 3 nights a week for 6 months straight. She thought about the perfume she found on his jacket that he explained away as a client's gift. She thought about every small lie that she had swallowed because she loved him, because she didn't want to be alone, because after 3 miscarriages she was terrified nobody else would ever want her. Now she understood. Dean didn't need her love. He needed her money, even if he didn't fully realize where that money was hiding. He needed the comfort of a wife who worked hard, asked few questions, and never suspected a thing. The next morning, Claire called her lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Faye who had handled Halden Group's legal matters for 9 years. Faye picked up on the first ring. "I need the truth about something," Claire said, her voice hoarse from crying all night. "Which departments does Wren Callahan work under?" There was a pause on the line. Then Faye said something that made Claire's stomach drop even further. "Claire, she's not just a consultant. 6 weeks ago, the board approved her for a director position. Dean recommended her personally. He said she was, and I'm quoting his email, the most talented woman I've ever worked with." Claire closed her eyes. Of course he did. Of course he pushed his pregnant mistress into a director's seat using his position as a mid-level manager who thought he was clever enough to manipulate a company he never even knew his own wife secretly owned. "Faye!" Claire said slowly, each word deliberate. "I want a full report on my desk by tomorrow morning. Everything. Every email, every meeting, every dollar. Comment below right now and tell me, if you were Claire, would you forgive him or would you burn it all down? I want to hear your answer, because what Claire decided to do next shocked everyone who thought they knew her. For the next 3 days, Claire didn't answer Dean's calls. He called 11 times. He texted apologies that read like scripts, empty words strung together to sound sincere. "I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please, Claire, we can fix this." But Claire wasn't broken like he thought she was. Something inside her had shifted, cold and clear, like ice forming over a lake. She wasn't the same woman who used to shrink herself smaller to keep the peace. 7 years of silence had built up inside her, and now it was finally cracking open. On the 4th day, Claire walked into Halden Group's Los Angeles office for the first time in almost a year. She rarely visited in person, preferring to run things quietly through phone calls and closed-door meetings with her executive team. But this time, she wanted to see it with her own eyes. She walked past the front desk. The receptionist, a young man named Toby, didn't recognize her first until Faye leaned over and whispered something in his ear. His face went pale as he stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Mrs. Halden," he stammered, using the name almost nobody in that building had ever spoken aloud. "I didn't know you were coming in today." "Nobody does," Claire said quietly. "Where's Wren Callahan's office?" Word spreads fast in an office building. By the time Claire reached the 3rd floor, people were already whispering, peeking out from behind cubicle walls. Phones lowered halfway from texting friends about the mysterious owner who had finally shown her face. Claire found Wren in a glass-walled office decorated with expensive orchids and a framed photo of her and Dean at some tropical resort. Wren was on the phone, laughing about something, her hand resting on her belly the same way it had at that restaurant. She looked up and saw Claire standing in her doorway. Confusion flickered across her face first, then recognition, then something that looked almost like fear. "You," Wren said, hanging up the phone without saying goodbye. "What are you doing here? Did Dean send you to beg me to leave him alone? Because it's a little too late for that." Claire stepped fully into the office, calm in a way that unsettled Wren more than any scream could have. "I'm not here about Dean," Claire said. "I'm here because I own this company." Wren laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "Sure you do." Faye stepped forward then, sliding a folder across the desk, official documents with seals and signatures that could not be argued with. Wren's laughter died in her throat as she flipped through the pages, her hands starting to tremble the exact same way Claire's had trembled the night she saw that photograph. "This is impossible," Wren whispered. "It's very possible," Claire said. "I built this company before I ever met Dean. I hid my name because I didn't want people using me for what I have. Apparently, that included my own husband." Wren's face went through 5 different emotions in the span of 10 seconds. Shock, denial, panic, and finally, something like desperate calculation. like she was trying to figure out how to save herself. "Please," Wren said, her voice cracking, one hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who you were. Dean told me you two were basically already divorced. He said the marriage was over years ago, he said. He said a lot of things," Claire said quietly. "He said he loved me too. If you're feeling something right now, this tightness in your chest, that's exactly how Claire felt standing in that office. Type, 'I'm still here,' in the comments of this story as you glued to the screen, because what happens next is the twist nobody expected. Not even me when I first heard this story. Claire didn't fire Wren that day, though everyone in the office expected her to. Instead, she did something far more devastating. She called a company-wide meeting for following Monday morning, every department, every employee, mandatory attendance. Word got back to Dean within hours. He showed up at Claire's hotel room that same night, banging on the door so hard the neighbors complained. When Claire finally opened it, his eyes were red, his tie loosened, his whole body trembling like a man who had finally realized the ground beneath him was gone. "You own Halden Group," he said, not a question, a broken statement of fact. 7 years, Claire. 7 years, and you never told me. "You never told me you were sleeping with a woman half your age either," Claire said. "I guess we both had secrets." "I love you," Dean said, falling to his knees right there in the hallway, grabbing at her hands. "Please, Claire, I made a mistake, a horrible mistake, but I love you. I've always loved you. Get up," Claire said, her voice steady even though her heart was breaking all over again, breaking for the version of herself who used to believe those exact words. "You don't love me, Dean. You love what I could give you. The comfort, the stability, and apparently a company you thought made you look important in front of your friends." "That's not true," he sobbed. "Then why?" Claire asked, her voice finally cracking. "Did you let her call me a barren pig in front of a room full of strangers and say nothing? Why didn't you defend me?" Dean had no answer. He just knelt there in the hallway, crying, while Claire closed the door softly, the click of the lock louder than any scream could have been. On Monday morning, the entire staff of Halden Group gathered in the main conference hall. Wren sat near the front, her hands folded protectively over her belly, refusing to look anyone in the eye. Dean wasn't an employee, so he couldn't attend, but everyone knew he was a reason for the meeting. Claire stood at the podium, calm, composed, wearing a simple gray suit instead of anything flashy. She didn't need flash. She had truth. "My name is Claire Halden," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. 12 years ago, I built this company from a small office with 4 employees and a dream nobody believed in except me. I kept my ownership private because I wanted this company to be judged on its work, not my name. She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough for everyone to lean forward. "Recently, I learned that one of our newest directors was promoted through personal connections rather than merit. Connections involving my own husband, who does not work for this company and never has, and who used his relationship with me, a relationship built on lies, to influence hiring decisions he had no authority to make." Gasps rippled through the room. Wren's face turned white as chalk. "Effective immediately," Claire continued. "That promotion is revoked, pending a full review by our ethics board. Nobody in this room will lose their job for merit-based work, but nobody will keep a position they didn't earn either." Wren stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. "You can't do this to me. I'm pregnant. I have a baby coming." "That baby," Claire said, her voice softening just slightly, the only crack of humanity in an otherwise unshakable moment, "deserves a mother who built something honestly, not something handed to her by a man cheating on his wife." Wren stormed out of the room in tears, her heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots in the silence. Nobody moved to comfort her. Nobody said a word in her defense. Claire finished the meeting, thanked her staff for their hard work, and walked out with her head held high for the first time in 7 years. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Claire didn't take anything from Dean because she never needed anything from him in the first place. She simply walked away, cutting every tie, changing her number, moving fully into the Connecticut home she had quietly kept as her own sanctuary long before the marriage fell apart. Dean lost his job 3 months after the scandal broke. Quietly let go once his company's clients heard whispers about the affair and the ethics violations tied to Halden Group. Wren gave birth to a baby boy that winter, alone, without Dean by her side, because he had already moved on to blaming her for the mess he created. Unable to face what he had done, Claire never remarried. But she wasn't lonely. She spent her days building Halden Group even bigger, mentoring young women who reminded her of herself years ago, quiet, hopeful, underestimated. She started a foundation for women struggling with infertility, women who had been told their worth was tied to their ability to have children, women who needed to hear that their value was never up for debate. The lesson in this story is simple, but it cuts deep. Never let anyone convince you that your worth is measured by what you can give them, whether that's children, money, or comfort. Real love does not need to hide, and real love never stays silent while someone else tears you down. And sometimes the quietest people in the room, the ones nobody bothers to notice, are holding more power and more dignity than anyone around them could ever imagine. If this story touched you, moved you, or made you feel something deep in your chest, do not scroll away without hitting that subscribe button, because more stories like this one are coming. Stories about betrayal, resilience, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to be broken. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this today. And drop a comment telling me what part of this story hit you the hardest. Tell me where you're watching from one more time before you go. I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next story.